BJ. And today on the show, we're going to talk about the day of grain and grape. Yeah, we're going to talk about alcohol. I see you over there, Vince. Yeah, we're going to talk about getting wasted today and have a little fun. The day of grain and grape, you absolutely know we're going to have to talk about celebrations and all kinds of things. But I think there's a little underlying darkness to this. We can pull from history and even our modern day. You know, I love to make these little connections. But um, for me, I think for tabletop role playing games today, on this day of grain and grape, I think if we overlay this on a lot of the motivations and interactions we have with our adversaries and our NPCs and our wider, greater world, I think we can have some fun with it. So let's get into the run the intro. Let's get our mind fuel going, kind of wake up a little bit, and then get into our storytelling. So thanks for being here. So, welcome again, creatives, community, and kind folks. I see our co-hosts are already into it. Although you had me laughing there, the N King says, yeah, if you're playing kids on bikes, this becomes a day of wheat thins and grape juice. Yeah, yeah. Um, but listen, we use, of course, I use the title "Grain and Grape." It's about wine. It's about drinking. It's alcohol, and there are so many celebrations that we use. Hell, we make up excuses to drink that shit, right? So we use this in conjunction with a lot of food and celebratory events to drink. And when I say celebratory, it doesn't necessarily need to be a good feeling, but we honor a particular situation or event or something with wine, with beer, and that kind of thing. You know, the idea of someone passing away and you pour one out because it's the drink that you would share with a loved one, that kind of thing. And there is much like on a wider scale, food, there's something about drinking with others that is an invitation that we're going to sit down and talk things out. And so layering on when an layering on this event of the day of grain and grape, where today is the day that we're gonna open up bottles, we're gonna break open the barrels and everything, um, and have a drink. It basically is a shorthand for, you know what, we might not even like each other, but for right now, we're going to sit down, we're going to have a drink, and as long as this drink lasts, we're not going to pull swords, we're not going to beat each other about the head and shoulders. We're going to have a conversation, and that conversation might be just surface level, right? It might just be like, what's the weather like? Oh, I don't know. How do your shoes feel? My feet hurt, and then it's like, all right, let's get to starting beating some ass, but maybe for right now it's not the thing. So what you guys have to say is, let's see what our co-hosts have to say, because the show is live. Yeah, today we get wasted. Um, Drew says there is indeed no need to consume fermented stuff. Well, people would early explorers would argue with you with that, because alcohol was grog was a big thing because it prevented water from getting stagnant, and so drinking very watered down uh, beers and wines and stuff was very common. Yeah. Mm-mm. The Yanking says the day of bread and wine. It's very big of you to give Italy the spotlight in one of these videos. Yep. And Vince says wine is a very German thing too. And of course, every region. I can already see. I could start a fight right now if I start talking about specific types of wines and beers and such, and which are better than others. And you can get all kinds of fights. The classic ogre that wants to steal the barrel of wine or beer from the local population is a great motivation to get player characters into a situation with an enemy that's just like, I just like the beer and the wine or whatever, right? I'm not trying to hurt anybody, but yeah. Vince says I'm living in a major wine region, and we've got some of that here in Ohio Valley. We got more wine than beer here. Not that I would like wine. Yep. Mm-mm-mm. Drew says, I'm not interested in wine, but German style bread is just the best, which is an excuse to start, bring out your best foods, even if it's like finger foods and such. Yeah. Vince says, spitting alcohol in a flame is a cool, if dangerous, right. That's an awesome thing too. I hadn't thought about that one, but it goes hand in hand, right? Sitting around a campfire or what have you, and then people drinking. Like it's almost a test of how much alcohol, how much flammable alcohol is in the alcohol itself. Of course, combined with other elements in there. One-eyed heathen says, "Hi, I'm going to head to bed as I listen. So I just wanted to say hello and thank you for the brain food. Oh, well, thank you for being here. I know the time I broadcast is god awful for many people, especially here in the States. But if you're just heading off to bed, I'm glad I can give you a little bit of advice on that. I mean, maybe my dulcet tones will soothe the brain and get you to fall asleep and go into a dream realm just for you. Yep." Vince says could be a way to summon spirits. Ooh, ooh. I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, in the medieval era, spirits were a literal drink, and I think it was alcoholic. That's why I feel health potions should be alcoholic. Ooh. See, we're already calling on like um, the historical and uh, I'm trying to think of a term for this. The 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 way alcohol makes us feel and the titles that were given to it are, hey, Epic Fantasy, the titles that are given to it really spawn something. And I think when we layer on the alcohol, the alcoholic beverages and things of that nature on top of it, we get ourselves a lot of ideas from it. Meaning, like, yeah, bring up mythology. Dionysus, Dionysus is is that it? The god of inspiration, um, inspiration. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Inspiration. Yeah, divine madness. Absolutely. What's the other fantasy? Uh, Mythological satyrs are a big thing with alcohol. Yeah, god of the grapes. Dionysus? Is it? Dionysus? You know the argument here on the channel about pronunciation. There is no such thing as a correct pronunciation. It's consensus. Dionysus. Okay, but of course here I'm showing off some. Going to show off some images and things. We've got like wine cellars and such. The physical representation of where they're at. We also have the idea of the grapes, the grain and grapes used to make alcohol in the first place might have a value in and of itself that the players might need to be part of. For example, let's say there's an orcish tribe or something that's threatening to burn down a harvest, or uh, they're going through and trashing, um, an orchard of grapes or something like that, and the players might need to step in on it. And we do have a little bit of classism in this as well. Maybe the players are like, you're a rich merchant that was an asshole. Like, I don't care that they're trashing your orchard. Maybe you should be nicer to people. Um, Here we've got barrels and things. There's even an underground. I know you guys seen this before, and there's very many variations of this, but the specific barrels are made to get a certain flavor out of specific types of alcohols. And even those empty barrels, after the alcohol's taken out, are then resold. And, like, for example, you can, here in the States, you can buy maple syrup that has been aged in like whiskey and bourbon barrels and things of that nature, which is pretty interesting. And then the barrels themselves have to be stored somewhere. So you've got like warehousing and things like that. And all of that can be part of when we have the argument of dungeons don't matter anymore. Well, we still use dungeons. It's just not for the purpose of, not always for the purpose of capturing people and torturing them. We have to have basements and sealed areas and warehouses to put these kind of things. And what a great way to have a maze-like navigatable location with a lot of danger if someone knocks over a barrel, with a lot of heights and hidden areas. Heck, this could even be a wine cellar or a place that houses like bourbon barrels and whiskey and that kind of thing. Could very well be, instead of having a tavern, maybe this is the place where everybody goes to hash out their conversations in little alcoves and whatnot, or goblins, standing on barrels stacked 5 high that are like, or kobolds or something, and they start pulling the pegs, getting the alcohol to spill out, or they stand up against the wall, they use their legs to push the barrels over in towards the PCs, maybe lighting it on fire or something, or the player characters do the same, or a big ogre throws them at you. All these kind of things really, of course, I'm talking about the environment, right? And I'm also showing like old distilleries, and I'd have to look up to see what the oldest distillery is. Let's see what the oldest dis let's see, oldest distillery, Scotland, the world. Bushmills, technically the oldest licensed distillery in the world, is certainly making the case. Master blender Alex Thomas is on a mission to prove the brand is still an Irish whiskey innovator even after 400 years. Very cool. Anyway, let's get back to what you guys have to say. Mm-mm-mm. No, you went too far. Yep, a Dwarven Brewery Dungeon. Hell yeah. The dwarves are like, of course we have a brewery down here. Like, why wouldn't we? And maybe it's being patrolled by some kind of monsters or something that protect the alcohol, but don't, and protect the things in the walls, but are dangerous to anyone else. I mean, anything from simply like having like dire wolves or something to something more insidious, like, I don't know, phase spiders or something like that, making sure that everything, or maybe the wood made for the barrels themselves comes from the woods, treants and other kinds of like plant-like monsters, and it could be horrible, the people going out in the woods and killing these things because it makes the best barrels, or it could be nice. Maybe there's an ancient elder tree, and the druidic circle, after the tree dies off and the other trees in the grove, you say goodbye, then to have that person live on literally in the drink that someone, the nectar of life that people drink, it lives on in these barrels, and they don't think anything of it. I mean, they're like, well, our bodies decay and whatever, but if you hack them up in the wood, we don't really think anything of it, right? It allows them to become immortal, and a form of immortality and honor and things. Maybe the alcohol's named after the good berries that are in an orchard or something by the Druidic circle or whatever. Yeah. Yep, with the master brewer's beers and ales being the treasure in the Dwarven Brewery Dungeon. Why not? Hey, we already know that a simple bottle of wine, or a master brewer, or a barrel of aged alcohol has the value of it is untold in our own modern society. Why wouldn't that be the same thing in a fantasy realm? Especially if the brewer stopped brewing, or maybe the master brewer, a very common mundane humanoid, learned to brew from the Fey world, was maybe accidentally or even purposefully, like, the Fey creatures drank their alcohol and was like, you are being, we have to take you to the Fey realm. Took this 0 level human to the Fey realm, taught him how to make some alcohols, came back and was like, how did you learn to do that? And it's like, special secret, can't tell you. And then maybe that individual themselves is valuable. We want, nobles literally causing having kidnapping and bounty hunting and murder and assassinations just to get this master brewer on their side. Threats and bribery to get people to do that. I mean, that's a very common thing. I mean, in terms of puffing your chest out and trying to impress people, having uh, having master chefs, the greatest food, the greatest drink, and to do that, especially in the fantasy realm, might require, this isn't just the best person. This is a person who's literally stepped off of our world into a completely different dimension of time and space to learn how to make an alcohol to come back. Hell yeah, hell yeah! It's worth it. It's worth it to spend a nation's coffers to get this person. The End King says the winery under the church is a very cool dungeon idea. It can go down forever and eventually wind into the catacombs of the previous and displaced and slaughtered civilization. Yep, absolutely. As a matter of fact, maybe there is an ancient altar or table or ritual that an older civilization did when they came to terms, and there was a peace, maybe there was a peace treaty over drink. And it was like, they wrote down or they carved into the walls that it was on this day that the two nations of the orcs and the elves came together and they drank. I don't know, maybe they exchanged drink or something, and they drank, and then somebody covered it up, and the war kept going on, and someone's like, no, this is real. And you come to find out that maybe they have the same um, genetic origin. Maybe they come from the same peoples and whatnot, and someone covered it up and whatnot. Alcoholic potions are actually an interesting idea. If you drink too much, you get intoxicated. You know what? Yeah, maybe what's the term? The miscability table is a little bit too bizarre for your game, so you just pick, intoxication for potions. So every time you start stacking potions, if you drink two healing potions, the first one fine, but the second one, intoxication. Roll that six-sided die. Yeah, you got, what is it? Uh beer goggle eyes, right? Yeah, the shice, the long-awaited day of um Dionysus. Yeah. Epic Fantasy Game Master says, but then I have pink dragons in Epic Fantasy that have alcoholic hallucinations and confusion as their breath weapon. Well, alcohol could possibly be the breath weapon of a lot of things, right? You like, if they breathe out the fluid and then strike their teeth to create a fire, that could be from fire. Whereas maybe alcoholic particulates could be like a mist. So if there's a breath weapon that's like a gas, it could be the same thing. And who's to say that all the hallucinogenic monsters don't have some relation to that? Hmm? Yeah, basements full of beer or wine. That brings us back to non-water floods. Yeah, hell's yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you start having all these barrels of barrels stacked up and knock them down. I mean, I need to find one that's like pretty. This looks pretty dangerous right here. I mean, take a look at this image, right? You sorry, take a look at this image. All these barrels stacked up and every. I mean, how much fun, if I'm using the word fun correctly, can we have by players and NPCs knocking down? Or what happens if someone casts a spell like magic missile, or someone does a push or shove with the ogre and knocks them into these barrels and just starts a domino effect? That's kind of cool if I'm using the word fun correctly, right? Uh, yeah, pretty cool, pretty, and I think, heck, we often think of fey creatures, and if you drink their alcohol, you eat their food, it has an effect on you. But maybe, just maybe, on this day, those monsters come out of the woodworks to come into society, and it's not that they're trying to. I'm trying to think of a better way to say this. We think of it as player characters like, oh, it's dangerous. You shouldn't drink the food and wine. But the humanity is like, hell yeah, we want them to come in and party with us. That's the best party in the world, right? Expand your mind out there and stuff. Yeah, that might be the best thing in the world. And of course, I want to be hypnotized by the thing. Let's see, there's some prices up here. Um, Deluxe handcrafted whiskey barrel. Oh, it's turned into furniture, almost $1,500. Um, Luxury premium aged oak, $80 on Amazon. Decorative furniture, $470. I mean, this stuff, and even the barrels themselves have a price to it, so that's kind of cool. I mean, it's just even just talking about it, and then there we have a whole society of people who are wine tasters, and where the wine and beer comes from. It's because it's based on, sometimes it's based on region. So it comes from a particular place. Sometimes it's based on the type of grapes used. And that's a thing. Um, Hell, there are people who would, you have a sailing ship that travels across oceans, and it's like, should we pack more supplies? And they're like, yeah, as they start packing on more alcohol. And we don't. Wizenberry Immortality, ever head of the Grainsky trilogy. What is that? What reference is that? Yeah, Vince says elven wine aged for 1,000 years. And because alcohol is often related to specific events, celebrations, festivals, honorifics, and things, could you imagine the pain that the elves would feel if someone just came along and started destroying their 1,000 year alcohol that they were saving for a particular time or place? Many of our television shows have a event where, and I don't know how they get away with this here, because I always think it's funny, but watch a television show, especially a legal show, a police procedural, a medical show, a whatever. You watch those shows, and what happens when they celebrate? One character goes to a desk, opens it up. In the bottom is a couple of glasses and a bottle of alcohol, and they pour each other a glass, and they drink, and they reminisce or talk, or at least have some sort of conversation over the alcohol. And that might be the lubrication to open up conversations in the world. Maybe the player characters, it's to teach the player characters like murder, killing everyone. Don't be a murder hobo. Maybe just sitting down and having a drink. I, this doesn't necessarily flow with alcohol, but there are many cultures around the world where breaking bread, it is polite to invite people into your home or your tent or your encampment and break bread with that person. And then that person or group of people knows that, and they know, you know what, we might be thieving murderers, but because we're starving and we lost 3 of our men because of a bad raid, but we see these people on the road, and the people on the road know that they're bandits. And so the people on the road, the first thing they do is offer them drink to protect themselves. And the bandits are like, damn it, okay. And that may be it. That might be a cultural norm in your setting. Yeah. Save me from work with world building, please. You're fine. Yeah. Oh, and the End King says, only aged 1,000 years. That's going to be bitter. Yep. Yeah. Because to the rest of us as humans, it's like, oh, it's been 1,000 years aging, and the elves are like, seriously, dude. Like, it's. I mean, it hasn't really aged that much. Now, 5,000 years. That's getting about right. Hitting about 10,000. Now we're starting to talk, right? And the humans are like, what? Huh? Yeah. Uh, Epic Fantasy Game Master says in basic D&D, they had the Wizard of Wines. The label of a wine bottle had a clue on it. So when I ran a campaign using the Beckme, basic expert companion, master and immortal. Oh shit. Anyway, Anyway, so when I ran a campaign using Beckme, I made Wizard of Wines, an adventurer company owned business that used spells to place random quest clues on all their bottle labels. That is so cool. Sorry that I stole your idea here. So it sounds like there's an underground of sorts. Like instead of the quest giver being the I'm the old man with a map that stumbled into the tavern, maybe the tavern, you go into the tavern, and you guys know what I feel about taverns, right? That a tavern is a microcosm of your world as well as a social nexus. So everything that happens in your tavern is a clue to the greater world. And maybe there are adventurers, warriors that go into the taverns and they're getting clues about adventure from the bottles. Maybe the tavern owner takes the bottle off the rack and puts it down in front of the PCs, says, no, you want to drink some of this. And the PC looks at the label, and to everyone else, it's just like, oh, they're admiring it, but really it's an adventure hook. That's really cool. That's how I'm looking at it. Yeah. Yep, Shice brings up within the ring of fire. Yeah, Fey wine is fairy blood. It's fairy blood. It's made out of fairy blood. They told me they changed the formula, but it's still made out of fairy blood. Yes, for those who don't know, in the role playing game Within the Ring of Fire, there is a playable race, species rather, that considers something known as Fey wine, and they literally drink the blood of Fey creatures that are other sentient creatures. It's pretty nasty. I love it. Uh, Drew says, be careful with aging your wine since you might end up with just vinegar, which, who's to say that there's something about the spoiling of wine? Like, what an easy thing to do. Hey, player characters, you have to protect the caravan of old ancient wines that have to be moved because the city that it came from was sacked, and you have to protect it on its way from one city to the next. And, yeah, okay. And then from there you start the ogres attack because they want the drink. A rival faction wants the alcohol because they know how valuable it is. The elven kingdom that's nearby respects the great winemaker that made it and such, and they're going to lend some of their troops to help the PCs or whatever. Vince says in Discworld there is a Riannual. I'm butchering the name, I'm sure. Riannual wine which you have to drink before you plant the grapes. Hmm. There might be other fluids that are alcoholic to other species that might not be alcoholic at all. Yeah, so if vampires drink fairy blood wine, what happens there? Is that the way they get intoxicated? Vampires drinking the blood of fey creatures? It would be interesting if player character races that are fey like in my world, tieflings are fey origin. They're not lower planes. They're not demon devil related. Elves maybe even goblins, gnomes might have a fey origin. So if a vampire were to drink their blood, maybe it's alcoholic. So they both target them, but also can become have a debilitation from drinking from them. That'd be interesting. Mike Marin says, what factions would we see on the day of grain and grape besides drunken brewmasters and partygoers? Maybe militant Puritans or healing clerics to nurse excess. Most festivals have paramedics ready. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're along with all the revelry, on because this is the day of, it could be one of remorse for the people we've lost, again pouring out a drink for those that are lost. And Puritans, I love the idea of maybe militant Puritans or healing clerics, yeah, who are there protesting. it, how often do we use protesters in our role playing games? They could be literally taking what is it, the faith militant, taking maces and breaking open the barrels all over the city to stop people from um, losing using their excesses, going into their vices and such, and they might be trying to stop it. Whereas maybe opposing this might be, normally the culture is very uptight. They don't show their emotions. Maybe they even go so far as to wear masks. It is not a time to express yourself. But there's an excuse if you drink wine and beer, or at least on this particular day or in a particular location, you can get away with all kinds of bullshit, and they just excuse it. Oh, it they just had, what's the term? There's a term where they just had the spirits in them. They just had the liquid in them, and people excuse the threats, the lies, the bullying, the destruction, and whatnot. Yeah, the Yang King says, I just realized my basement under church that leads to catacombs idea is just the first Diablo. Yeah, it sure is. We're really going hard on the grape part of this idea. We are. Um, Beer, at least in a modern context, tends to favor more of a blue collar work where um, it's drinking beer, frosty beers. Over, at least here in the States, we love ourselves very ice cold beers, and that's more of a revelry, like, yeah, like work's done, let's get together. Whereas wine tends to, the two do meet together, let's be honest. But wine, at least from my point of view, my opinion, tends to flow more into an upper class, um, civilized, less less aggressive form of communication and interaction. So beer could be very well be like, the ogres are in a fighting mood, but they're not in a murderous mood. Maybe they want to wrestle, arm wrestle, Greco-Roman wrestling. They get into pushing contests with the PCs and whatnot, and they're just like, we're going to have a competition, and the PCs are rolling their eyes like, oh, come on, just fall asleep, please, just fall asleep. And they're like, we're going to take these boulders and roll them uphill and see who can do it the fastest. And the PCs are like, can three of us help push a boulder and just one of you guys? And they're like, sure. Big old slap on the back, 2 hit points, right? Yeah, belch, burp. Fairy blood drinking vampires would probably appreciate the flavor, but maybe it also saps those of the fairies' bloodline, rendering them weaker and cursed despite distance. Ooh, fey creatures hate vampires because it reduces their bloodline. Wow. Yeah. Epic fantasy. Just put a few barrels of monkeys on it with the real ones. Barrels of monkeys. Ooh. The factions that use their brand to burn for the wine labels, to burn the barrels and such. I mean, you could have a faction war over who owns what, where, and when. I mean, take a city adventure. You have a gang that takes over 3 city blocks, but within those city blocks is a wine cellar, and that wine cellar belongs to the gang that got pushed out of that region. And now you automatically have a war, and the player characters might be involved in that. Like, hey, I'll take a um, I'll take one of your best drinks there, bartender. And the bartender takes the second best, and it's like, no, I want the best one. And you're like, we don't pour out the best one, not yet. We don't have permission. And the gang is like, what are you drinking? Right? Yep. Just had to think about nectar and ambrosia, the food of the gods. What would happen if you drank ambrosia as a mortal? I I don't know. I'm tangentially familiar with that story. The nectar of the gods, ambrosia, the idea that maybe drinking the alcohol brings one closer. The idea of the spirits, maybe debilitating yourself physically, getting drunk and stuff, maybe allows us to see spirits themselves. And the spirits are like, oh, they got drunk enough on this day. Great. Now let's have a conversation. you know, Vince says there are master of wine, which are basically the best you can get when it comes to wine. You have to be able to identify wine's region and year and know basically everything about it. There are only 416 masters of wine in the world. They're like people who have perfect ear and tonality. We have people who have what we would consider sommeliers, people who are perfect um, uh, taste buds, right? And those individuals are renowned for that skill. And could you imagine, like, they're tasting like Goodberry wines? They're like, taste, taste. Mm-mm. No, 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 no. These berries were grown in the northern reaches. There must have been at least three frosts. Yeah, it's from the giants, from the frost giant region. Nah, terrible. And the frost giants are like, "What did you say?" Like, no, frost giants, you don't know good alcohol. Here, let me pour you this. And the giants pick up the little thimble-sized cup and like, damn, you're right. We won't murder kill your people because we want to get some of these. I mean, what a great trade function, right? The human lands have no problems with the militant hobgoblins because they give them 3 wagons of alcohol every season, right? Yeah, it's just as good as food and weapons and things. Shai says Grinsky trilogy by Zilpha Keatley Snyder, a hippy dippy sci-fi fantasy for young adults. It led to the C64 game Below the Root, and the fourth part of the trilogy was a computer game. Wow, that's a sounds like a deep dive that I am completely unaware of. Mm-mm-mm. You guys, Wizenberries with the drugs in that fantasy world. That's awesome. Yeah. Maybe the player characters don't realize in their own realm that things like Goodberry and um, uh, 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 some of their spell-like and magical and fantastical things, those healing potions, when they go to another region, they cross the mountain range or something, and the people over there, to them, they distill alcohol from it, and so when they find out someone can actually has these things, maybe people try to steal it from them. Like, oh man, we don't remember because every alcohol has a formula to it, a recipe, and that might be pretty interesting. Mm-mm-mm. Talked about the games. Drew says the day of grain and grape could be the day of bread and beer in a region that has no grapes. Absolutely, absolutely. Because grain. Let's flow into the grain part of this. Um, Many alcohols are made from. Let's go into the grain. So say types of beers and types of beers and examples. Let's see if we can get some. So let's share this out. So, for example, for when it comes to beers, we've got stouts, wheat beer, porters, brown ales, pilsners, lagers, ales, India Pale Ale, which is saying is very extremely regional. It says 15 more. There we go. Sours, saisons, Saison, Drunkel, Kolsch. I'm butchering that name. Brock's, American Lagers, English Pale Ale, Cream Ales, Doppelbox, Lambics. Wow. I mean, there's so many of them. And of course, you can see, American, where it says India, locations, English, regions might be extremely important in your world too, where these individuals um, get the alcohol from, and it might be that you have a connection. A player character could prove a connection with an enemy by saying we come from the same region because of the alcohol that they either produce or drink or prefer or something like that. Um, so absolutely, wow. Why isn't this? It's not sharing. Oh, I see what I did. There we go. Getting drunk on red wine on the beach in Greece during the blood moon does indeed give you magic powers. Clairvoyance, seeing into the next dimension, all that stuff. Yeah, on the day of grain and grape, maybe um, It's maybe it's possible the public sees things that are real because the player characters see those things, but to them it's like a drunken stupor. Oh, this alcohol got me so drunk I could see unicorns and into other worlds or whatever, like getting high. You know what I mean? Getting intoxication and drug drug highs. But the PCs are like, oh, they really did astral project, they really did do these things, you know. um, why not? Why not have that be a thing? Uh, Vince says the Rianual wine grows back in time. That's what I wanted to tell. It is very weird. You drink it before you plant the drink you just drank. Basically, a growing time paradox. Oh, oh, that's interesting. There's only there's only so many grains and wheats and hops that exist. It's just the same ones over and over again. There have never been that many grapes in the orchard. It's just that there's a time paradox of the grapes being the same grapes that were made into the alcohol that you pour into the ground to make the grapes itself. Mm-mm-mm. I do like the idea of a place that doesn't have any grapes, and maybe there are special fronds that grow on the sides of hills or something, or special, long fields of wheat and grain that are as high as an average person's chest. So the smaller races, they can kind of navigate their way through, but you can't see them except if you take a really good look at the wind that blows across the fruited plains and whatnot. Be kind of cool. Maybe uh, minotaurs and other hoofed like uh, humanoids protect the orchards and the fields of the grains and such, and and they are the ones. They're not evil, but they don't want anything and anyone getting to it. And so they carry their battle axes and big giant clubs to beat away the birds and the interlopers and such that want to get to it. And of course, it's like maze like to get through the region. But the Minotaurs are like, yeah, everybody loves the Minotaurs because they protect the beer distilleries or something. Yeah. Getting drunk in Greece. Are we back at my proposal to become Maenads? Yeah. Yeah. Get drunk. Also, what a great idea to use this as a downtime day. On this day, there may also be navigatable social necessities, offering enemies drinks. It may be like an Elysium kind of thing where, again, bringing up Vampire the Masquerade, where on this day, it's considered proper to have a neutrality amongst enemies that are out, and they send their emissaries in, or nobles that hate each other, and they always throw, even verbally, they throw threats at each other, but they know there's not going to be anything physical happening. But on this day, sitting down, having a drink may be the thing that lubricates the words that are said. And on this day, no matter where you go, it's where all the story hooks are dropped. It's the free interrogations for the player characters, for a lot of the NPCs, and then to find out, like, oh, the vampire lord up to the north isn't the big bad guy. The vampire lord is in uh has a is only a servant of a greater power, and there's others other than the vampire lord that also serve this great power as well. I didn't know that. Wow, wouldn't have known that except over drinks, right? um there's something else I was thinking of. Oh, all those monsters we were thinking about before, that was mentioned by Epic Fantasy, about hallucinogenics. Maybe, just maybe, some of your monsters, one or more of them, are related to the grain or the grapes that are used to create the alcohol in the first place, and there's something intrinsic about them. So an example would be boulets, land sharks. that dig and burrow underneath the earth, purple worms as well. Um, the greatest, most fertile land is the land where they live, and so it is grown on that land because, and so we don't. The dwarves are like, we don't want them murder killed, or maybe humans and the elves don't want them destroyed because it makes the most fertile land. But maybe the dwarves live underground and they're like, we've got a purple worm problem and we need to stop them. And they're like, no, no, no. That's where our fertile land is supposed to be. Maybe there's a monster that has something that grows on its back. Those mushroom myconids maybe are used for alcoholic purposes. Lots of alcohol are made through the fermentation of different types of, let's see let's see what let's see list of fermented foods. From, let's see if we can find something here. Gotta no, no, no. Fermented drinks. Oh, nah, that's not. I gotta go back. Yeah, I knew it. Yep, pop up. I'm trying to find out like what. For, I don't just want the name of the drinks. I want the thing that is fermented to make the drink in the first place. I know kombucha, but that's not what I'm trying to think of. Root beer. I'm fucking pop-ups. I'm using the wrong I'm trying to think of the wrong fermented items used to make beer. Hmm. Hmm. Ingredients. We want ingredients. Water, starch, hops, yeast, clarifying agents. Maybe. Oh well. I'm not getting it. I'm not finding it. Sorry. 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 Reaper Mensch. Reaper Mensch. Hello. Uh. Let's get back up here. Okay. Saw that beer, wine, more big on those hops and barley. What I'm sorry. I got distracted. What I'm thinking of is you can. There are things you can ferment, and the things that you can ferment make different alcohols, like sugar, potatoes, um, uh, uh, um, oh, anything that has sugars in it, and you ferment it can be made into an alcohol. But I'm trying to think of the list, how to get to search for the list because I'm here live. How to search for the list to get the thing to find the thing. Um, and I'm not my mind's not working because I'm live. But what I'm getting at to try to look for it is that there may be someone, something, a faction, monsters or whatever that by consuming the item creates a particular alcohol. So, for example, um, I'm Ankhegs. Okay, I had to think of something. So Ankhegs, the big giant acid spitting ant-like crab-like things that farmers always hate, right? And maybe that alcohol, maybe that acid they spit out, churning in their gullet, is the fact that they eat potatoes, and potatoes make an alcohol, right? Because it ferments in their stomach, which means the farmers really don't want to get rid of the ankhegs. They just don't want to be killed by the ankhegs because the ankhegs, as they eat, I don't know, the mushrooms, or they eat the diseased leaves in their farm, their big orchards or something, that something they squirt out or deposit, or when they die or can be harvested from them, creates this great alcohol or something. Um, what plants? No, list of. I need a list. List of. Um, list of plants to create. Elderberry, rosemary, yarrow, thyme, mugwort. Yeah, fermented grass, algae, palm trees, flower petals, agave, 14 plant. Here we go. Okay, so I have a list, a little bit short list here. Agave, apple cider. Yes, there we go. Apple cider, barley, corn for whiskey and gin, grapes, of course, for wine and brandy, hops for ales and stouts, millet for pombe in Africa, potatoes for vodka, rice for sake, rye for whiskey, sugar cane for rum, which is a big thing, wheat for Weiss and vodka, wormwood for absinthe, and I know there's plenty more. I know there absolutely is plenty more. I just can't. My brain, the brain. Yeah, Drew says, yeah, fermented potatoes, isn't that vodka? Yes, and an adventure could be convincing, or a society finds out, or a faction finds out that they've been fermenting rice, but then the PCs bring potatoes. Then they find out that, ew, if you ferment potatoes instead of rice, which they don't have, they make a different alcohol, which in of itself, yeah, it could be awesome. Reaper mentions haven't used Muggy for many years. So you are a brewer. It sounds like from what I see. Yeah, the base for distillation substrate, is that what it's called? Like there are people with some digestive disorder that ferments bread into alcohol in their stomachs. They can get drunk on bread alone. Hey, that might be. You know what? What a strange but kind of cool. You don't even need to mechanize this. You could throw that in and say, hey, everyone from this region, that happens to be a trait they all have, like having freckles and red hair or something. Like in your world design, you could have people who are adversely affected by, or in some way manipulated by, alcohol. One of um, the ways that Native Americans, indigenous peoples here in the States, some say were manipulated because alcohol might not have been the biggest thing for all the scattered tribes. But when settlers came here and colonists came here and offered them alcohol, alcoholism became a thing that didn't exist. They may have had it in their genetics, but it didn't exist until it was offered to them. And that could be something. Giving Ogres may not have known that they loved alcohol as much as they did until it was offered to them by the player characters, thereby creating a different underground of a thing that didn't exist in the first place, right? Um, uh, Maybe. Reaper says, haven't used wormwood is nuts to tincture with. Sugarcane is delicious to munch on. Yep, especially during D&D. Yes, just literally taking literal sugar cane off the I would say off the vine, hacking it off, stripping it down, and just sucking on the sugar cane itself is pretty delicious. I agree with you there. Um, a Reaper mentioned, yeah, especially during D&D. That would be kind of a cool gift around a in person game to like get some sugar cane and hand it out to people. And listen, people have gone to war. There was literally a slave trade to on the Caribbean Isles to mine for sugar, and I mean mine for sugar, mine for salt, grow sugar cane for sugar, the whole rum industry itself, tobacco and things. And this just happens to be one of many vices. And so, yeah, sugar cane, pretty important for rum to create it. And what a great way for to start a lot of the battles that we see and the conflict, the drama we see in our role playing games. Sabotaging a sugarcane field, burning it, acid, salting the land and destroying it, or maybe a natural event happened. Maybe it's just a bad crop, and the the nobles that had a lot of money from this, the rich merchants that were getting a lot of money from this, now with a bad crop for this year, less money, which means less influence, which means danger, which means someone else may step in to do a thing, uh, which might mean, hey, player characters, you need to protect me because I need to go to the druids and see if I can get some kind of relationship with them to get our crops back up. And the druids are like, we don't have anything to do with this. We get high on life, right? Or it could be the opposite. Maybe the druids have a monopoly on it, and they literally go around murder, killing, threatening, bribing, exiling those who dare try to steal their recipes to make the best alcohols. In real life, we've had monasteries where they make cheeses and wines and things of that nature. Maybe society has only a certain class of people are allowed to make these things, and when they find other people doing it, it's like a faux pas. Um, it's a slap in the face. It is um, it's a thing that you just don't do. And so maybe in your realm or part of your city or your entire nation, maybe only the religious folk are able to create these things because they have control, going twisting back a little bit into religious puritans and such. Maybe they let the population have just a little bit but not enough to go crazy. And of course there's going to be people who make deals, black market deals, who sneak into the monasteries and such to steal the alcohol. The supposedly pure ones saying you can't get it, but behind the walls they're just like having fun. Could be. WW repeats so bitter right through you throughout the night. When I used it with I do not understand that. Sorry there, Reaper Mensch. I'm not sure where you're coming from, but live show, very difficult for me to to keep up with those kind of things. Um, a mobile distillery might be a thing that moves across land and sea, especially on the back of something, like a giant turtle or whatever. Maybe there are um, moving places, and the ones who are skilled at creating these great alcohols, especially like Drew mentioned about a place that doesn't have grapes, but they have grains, or a place where neither of these things are able to grow in large enough quantities to make it worthwhile. And so maybe there's something that's mobile that moves from place to place on a day of grain and grape. They came from 1,000 leagues away to a place, and everyone's like, "Yay! 1 year it took a year for you to get here, but yeah, they're here." Or it could be once a month or something. It doesn't have to be a year long. But on this day, finally, everyone's starting to, and maybe they don't sell it with gold coin. Maybe they trade in value or information or memories. Things like that. Yep, spirit folks making this spiritosis. Yeah, by Aldion, a mobile apothecarium. Hell yeah, yeah, mobile, and it could be mundane. When I say mundane, maybe pulled by horses, like a wagon train, huge caravan, and it comes in the city. Maybe they set up a tent, and everyone's able to come in and taste the the one that they taste that expands their mind. That's the one they pick. It's not value The value isn't in how it's been aged, but the ingredients themselves, like a potion or a tincture or an elixir, something about your bloodline or whatever reveals or is transformative even. Hey, if I drink this, I I feel like I've got the strength of 10 ogres. And you know, sorry, you really do have the strength of 10 ogres when you drink it. Everyone else, nah, not the same thing. But when you drink this thing, it's like a potion to your bloodline. Reaper mentions, yeah, exactly what I was thinking of, right? Maybe it's, or this could be far more fantastical. Like maybe there are fey creatures and mortals and monsters. Like it's strange bedfellows that all have come together for the one purpose of creating these great, like it's like Oktoberfest here in this, where we stole this, where we have in the States, right? It's just everybody getting together. They're all experts. It's all where it comes from. Like, for example, maybe there's someone there that's like, oh, I make my alcohol from the mushrooms that go in the back of my my herd of a half a dozen uh, rust monsters. And there's like small little mushrooms that grow in the back, and the rust monsters are fed a couple of copper coins every now and then to keep them a little bit, iron spikes or whatever to keep them calm. But they're like, oh, and they take little tweezers and they pull the mushrooms or something like, I don't know. It could be fun. And then maybe there's another within the tent, there's another little section that they have cordoned off where it's small baby purple worms, but they're only the size of like maybe a forearm. They're like 3 to 6 feet long, and they're held in these like containers like of soils and such. And on top of the soils, there's like shoots of sugar cane or wheat or rye or whatever, and the purple worms are down in there. You can see them, like they poke their heads up a little bit and then they dig back down again, and you see the little spiky tails with little poison stingers on it, and the person that handles them has like thick gloves on, and they're taking shoots and it could be something like funky like that. Again, on the back of a giant turtle. It could be because, and listen, there are plenty of monsters that we normally, hey, let's murder kill them, like medusas and ettins and ogres and things. But maybe on this day, they're like, you know what? That war we have with each other, that conflict we have with each other, let's sit down and talk, hash out what the hell we want and what you want. It may be that this is the day, on a day of grain and grape, that the reason in your world why a lot of these monsters exist in the first place is they come into the human lands. And when I say human, I mean humanoid lands. And that's where they recruit from. And only on this day, most people are like, I could never be manipulated by, but across the table, they speak with someone in the Medusa, um, yeah, the Gorgon, whatever. He, with snakes in his hair, has got his, you know, cloak down. There's only shadow, and they run an assassin's guild or thieves guild or something, and they're like, I'd like to talk to you, rich noble. And the noble's got a same cloak because they don't want to be seen in the dark alleys or whatever. And they're like, so what are you saying to me? I can only be here a short time. I don't want to be seen with you. And I'm like, I know that. I know you think you're better than me, but let's just say that we both have the same enemy. And then it's like, oh, wait a minute. Maybe the noble starts getting corrupted just a little bit, maybe just a little bit over time. Maybe instead of a psychological change, they start working with their enemies. Maybe there's a physical change on the day of great and great. Maybe the thing you imagine on any other normal day, you become that thing on this day. You start drinking the alcohol and turn purple and turn into a berry yourself, or you float into the air 3 feet off the ground, or you do grow another head and start having arguments with yourself, or whatnot. I don't know. You can have some fun with it, but yeah, on this day, the day of grain and grape, I thought we would just have some fun, and this one I do feel, while you can have serious things, exploration, using it to have these excuse me, have non-water floods in your game. Um, I think it could be kind of fun to also use this as a method to have an excuse for why some of your NPCs and bad guys are having conversations in the first place, and a good excuse to have a celebration in your world. Why are people together? What are they drinking to? Maybe the player characters come into the city and they're just given drinks and they don't understand. And then there's a bell that rings and everyone stops and takes a sip. Like, what's that for? And they're like, that was the day that the knights of the silver flame were slaughtered in the battle of so and so, so right. And they're like, oh wow, and like, yes, we drink the silver drink to them, and at the end of the day, we will pour one out, and hopefully, if you're blessed, if you're inebriated enough, you'll get to see one or more of the silver knights that walk around as spirits or something. And then maybe the player characters need to get inebriated to see the knights who are desperate to warn somebody, anybody, about the impending threat, and that in itself could be a story about drinking. And it also um, can lead to encouraging players to put themselves in a disadvantageous position to gain a benefit on the outset. Um, the idea that the idea of players getting drunk is kind of fun, but you don't want to kill them when they're disadvantaged. So, as a storyteller, game master, flame tender, narrator, you may use this opportunity to say, guys, trust me, I'm not going to give you guys disadvantage for 24 hours because you're drunk and then kill your character, right? Shai says, thank you, DBJ, for making it a sanctioned beer for before fear day. Going to crack a cheeky brew before 4 p.m. Hey, listen, uh, here in the States, and I'm sure many places around the world, we always say, it's 5 o'clock somewhere, which, thank you for bringing that up there, member of the squad. We culturally have a thing about not, it is a cultural faux pas to start drinking in the morning. And why is that? Is it because, is it a blue collar, white collar, like you shouldn't be drunk at work, and when you get off work it's 5 o'clock, so now you have the opportunity to get drunk, and those who drink before, during work hours, are considered to be like um lazy and runabouts or ragamuffins or something. I don't know. Where did that come from? I want to look that up and then get out of here. Why? Let's see. Why is it? Is it uh, wrong to drink before 5 p.m.? Let's see if that says something. Why is drinking alone or before 5 considered bad? Why do some people consider it gauche to drink alcohol? Let's see. Let's see if we can find something. Uh, there are many. I thought that's what. Why do some people consider it gauche to drink alcohol before 5 o'clock or at noon or with breakfast? There are many stories about prime ministers, presidents, and celebrities drinking early in the day. The old school standard work day is 9 to 5. Yep. After you get off at 5, you can go have a beer. The stereotype is that your stay at home wife would meet you at the door with a cocktail. The phrase and songs about it's 5 o'clock somewhere all refer to the 5 p.m. time that a lot of people um, would go and drink. Yeah. Yep. That's what I figured it was from, or at least in general. In general, although in a fantasy world, it may be it may be improper for people to drink because of their capabilities or where they're located. Like, there might someone might say, in the golden grove, to the north, no one ever drinks there. Like, don't go there if you've ever had a drink. And they're like, well, why? And it was like, if you have a drink, the fey creatures will tap you on the shoulder or something. And maybe it's true. Maybe you get there, pour a little drink, go, 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 tap on the shoulder. What are you doing? The fake creatures, what are you doing? Like, well, they said it would tap you on the shoulder. And like, you do realize that I was busy doing something else. Now I've got to tap you on the shoulder. Now that you made me do that, something like that. Mm-mm-mm. Yep, alcohol lowers your inhibitions. Your inhibitions is what stops you from doing all the stupid, reckless, or scary thoughts that pop into your head. Yeah. Yep, yep, yep. Mm-mm-mm. Yeah, and I don't know, drinking a little, drinking a lot. Why is day drinking frowned upon? It isn't everywhere, but I'll give you two ends of the spectrum. I live in Tennessee. This is a person's answer. The buckle of the Bible Belt. Day drinking in public is unheard of. Drinking, period, is considered sinful to some. People assume you're an alcoholic, and you'll hear lots of harumphs and tisk-tisks. Yep. When I lived in New Orleans, no one thought twice about it. It was perfectly normal to go to to breakfast and see people in business attire having Bloody Marys. Yep, Bloody Marys and mimosas for breakfast. A beer or martini at lunch is no big deal. Hell, you can sit at a bar all day and get piss drunk, and as long as you're not driving, nobody cares. I think regional differences in religion and culture from attitudes about drinking, as long as day drinking on occasion doesn't keep you from your responsibilities, you do you. Yeah, that seems to be the overriding thing. Yeah, Shai says in Germany too, except it's 4 p.m. No beer before 4, and it's kein Bier vor wir. I can't. I'm going to butcher German, but yeah, except it's 4 o'clock. Yep, no beer before 4. I could see that, and it's got a and the way it's written has a musicality to it, which also kind of fits too to help people remember. Shai says, dude, it's easy. It's because once you start, you can't stop. So you really better hold off until later in the day before you start getting foobarred. Yep. Yeah. And Mofa says, I assume it's because it's a sign of being an alcoholic. And now we do have day drinks, at least here in the States, like Bloody Marys and mimosas, but they were often, in some ways, like the Bloody Mary, they were often the evening drinking drink, if that makes sense, right? It's we haven't stopped drinking since the last night, and now it's the morning, and it's like the coffee. The Bloody Mary and the mimosa is almost like the coffee of the wake up drink for the next drink, I think. Kind of. Yeah, and it is a sign of being an alcoholic because it's like, really? You really can't wait till you're off of work or evening hours or something? Yeah. Mofa says, as a non drinker, I noticed whenever a group of people get together socially, in addition to talking about weather and work or kids, they usually talk about various alcohols they've had. And it's a great way to break the ice, right? I mean, we could make fun of that. Um, Listen, we all know someone who's an alcohol snob who knows their wine and or beer back and forward and is always critical of other people who, like myself, who's not a drinker, who I can barely tell one alcohol from another. And I feel like beer has some of the worst tastes like what I call boiled socks to me. And so sorry, but it does. And some people, and I'm sure a beer snob would go, no, no, no. I know some smooth beers that don't. No, 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 no. I get sissy drunk if I need to. It's gotta have like a fruit. It's gotta be mixed with something else that's like fruity and sweet or whatever. So, but that being said, we all know alcohol snobs. Why don't we put them in our game, right? We could do that. Shai says in most of Europe, it's considered okay for senior citizens to day drink with propriety, but totally frowned upon for anyone else. Maybe age and position may earn you like, hey, buy that person a drink, right? A military veteran, I'm gonna buy that person a drink. A person from the people that come out of the mines, maybe or people that sailors fishermen or something that go for 6 months out of the year. When they come back, it's perfectly okay. The dwarven mines where they're working 16, 18-hour days every day, and then finally they're off. It's like, nah, when they came out the mines, it's first thing in the morning, but listen, they just got off work. Let them drink as much as they want. That might be a thing as well. Socially acceptable, right? Hey, that person is has a sword and shield of the I don't know, seven scales or something. Anyone that's got a symbol of the seven scales gets to drink on my tab whenever, you know. Mufa says, I just remain silent and tune out those conversations since they may as well be speaking a different language. Yeah, the alcohol snubs. No, see, there's an IPA that's better than this. Made normally in the fall, has a little bit of pumpkin in it, and you're just rolling your eyes like, oh, what? Yeah. Drew says, I liked the bitter tasting beers, but I had no alcohol for well over a decade. Oh, wow. Oh, okay. Okay. So I'm going to crack a Javert, Javert in about 10 minutes. Quick to trip to the holy gas station across the street. pay your tithe. Yep. Like, but anyway, guys, I know I went a little bit long today, but that's all right. We had some fun with the grain and grape today. A little bit of fun with it. Really appreciate you guys just being part and parcel of the show. I thought I'd do something that's just a little bit more fun, a little bit different, and shake it up because of course we're going to talk about uh, deep and dark and dangerous things. So, guys, thank you very much for being part of the show. I really appreciate it. Everyone, have a great day, and I will see thee later. Peace.